Hello there and welcome to Keep and Destroy. This is your host, Adam Luff, the Gerry Anderson podcast where I interview his fans and ask them what five would they like to keep and what five would they like to destroy. And for this episode, I'd like to welcome AJ Frost. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Adam. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. How did you become a fan of Gerry Anderson?
Well, I was actually born in the 1990s, so my earlier years was my granddad had videotaped Joe 90 and Stingray, so that started getting me into it, watching like this young boy take on brain patterns and sort of do all these amazing tasks, and then watching this underwater world of, you know, an advanced submarine fighting aquamphibians. It was like, wow. My grandma bought me the Captain Scarlet collector set. The till woman took one of the VHS out of the box and scanned the VHS, didn't scan the full box, so she got the entire collector's set for the price of one VHS, which was, she wasn't going to say anything, but it was an absolute bargain. I know I had one of them weird ones, like them bargain bin VHSs that were like random episodes of two shows stuck together. But one of them was Thunderbirds 2086, which I know is not a Gerry Anderson, but I wish it would have been because it was brilliant.
Yeah, I completely forgot about Thunderbirds 2086. But then, since Gerry Anderson didn't make it, I'm not putting it as part of the eligible list. But and I've not actually seen a single episode of it. Maybe I should give it a try. But is it worth watching?
I would say it's worth watching, especially if you sort of like Thunderbirds and you do like Thunderbirds or Go. I'd say 2086 is definitely a good sort of like in the middle. It's not like proper Thunderbirds, so it's not like, oh, it's the family that run it. It's like it's a world organization now instead. But it still has like space rescue, specialist vehicles. It still captures that like future technology, even more advanced actually as well, when they can actually do like rescues in much deeper space. I mean, some of the vehicles are a bit different, and the fact that Thunderbirds 1, 2, and 3 can actually combine into one vehicle to get everything they need to their danger zones and the rescue areas. Definitely give it a try. I think it is actually a good addition to Thunderbirds itself.
Well, the only anime that Gerry worked on was the original Firestorm. Have you seen that at all?
Personally, I haven't. I do need to try and see if I can find it. I did watch the Firestorm that was made after his passing, and I did think it was very good. The advanced puppeteering was quite ingenious, to be honest, and I hope that I can see more of that, because I definitely like it. But I will definitely try and find the original anime and watch that as well.
Well, apart from being a fan of Gerry Anderson, has he inspired you to do anything with your career?
Yeah, actually he has, because having watched like Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet from such a young age, it always sort of like instilled that idea of, you know, do what I can to help other people. I did 2 different cadet groups actually. I was in the ATC, and then I actually became an instructor in the cadets for the RMC, the Royal Marine Cadets. And it did lead me to eventually, I joined the Navy as an aircraft engineer. So if someone said, oh, is it because of Thunderbirds? Yeah, absolutely.
I also see that you've done a fair bit of cosplay as well. So have you done any Gerry Anderson characters, or if you haven't, do you plan to?
I did a Gerry Anderson crossover actually, which is quite an odd one. It was the first time I went to Dragon Con out in the States. I was building a Halo Marine armor set, and I thought, I don't want to just do a Halo Marine. I want to do it differently. So I painted it bright red. I put all the Spectrum logos on. I scratch built myself a Spectrum sidearm, made the hat from scratch. I even sat in front of my TV watching Captain Scarlet and copying the details onto this red hat. And I did a Captain Scarlet Halo Marine crossover. And I went around a whole weekend. One of the days I was wearing it, I think I had someone in a movie standard replica Batman costume run up to me and says, "This is amazing. I've never seen anyone do Gerry Anderson here." And he shook my hand, and I was blown away.
I guess you could say you've done a version of what that Blast Entertainment video game should have been. Instead of a driving simulator, it should have been a first-person shooter. Have you played the Captain Scarlet PS2 game at all?
I actually do have it, and I do still have a PlayStation 2. As a driving game, it's not too bad driving like the Saloon and the SPV, but after a couple of missions, it's kind of a bit boring. Yeah. It's sort of quite repetitive. So maybe something like the Action Man PS1 game, where you do varying bits and then have it designed as Spectrum, would probably be a better idea in my mind.
I did play the Captain Scarlet and the Thunderbirds games for the PlayStation 2, and I just accepted them for what they were. Blast was a cheap company, so I was okay with it. I mean, it's funny when you play the Thunderbirds game, in that one you have like Thunderbird 2 rescuing cows from just transport them away from one field to the next because of a nuclear power plant.
Oh yeah, you've got to do Thunderbird 1, you've got to go in a hover and then try and land it. I'm thinking the Thunderbird 1 just lands normally anyway. It doesn't need to go rocket end up. But I did play, it was on a Game Boy, there was a Thunderbirds game. I can't remember the name, but that one was really good, simply because it varied so much. I mean, one mission, you're the mole trying to dig your way around and find something. The next, you're Thunderbird 2 trying to get from point A to point B. This was a good for a Game Boy game.
Right, so now it's time to begin the keep list. So what would you like to keep, AJ?
Well, my first choice for keep would be Thunderbirds, as it was my favourite series, and it's the episode The Uninvited. Plot-wise, it's just the fact that it opens with Scott coming back from a rescue that he wasn't really needed at, so it just shows, humanity can deal with a few emergencies on its own. And then he just gets surprise attacked by these fighters that bear a mark no one knows. And he crashes, and the fact that International Rescue themselves can't find him, his radio's out. Now International Rescue needs rescue. What's going to happen? It just ticks so many boxes for me in terms of, the story always keeps you entertained. The fact that, the first minute is Scott getting attacked, and it's like, couldn't believe it. And then it sort of turns out it shows everything that people need to be aware of. If you're going to go in the desert, take extra water, and it shows like what actually happens if people start getting dehydrated, especially the dehydrated, and then they find a room full of treasure. I mean, anyone would go a bit crazy. And it's honestly the best line, I think, has got to be the case of, he says radio and tell them I'm okay, and he goes, what's the frequency? I guess any frequency will do, really, because that's just that running gag of anyone says, well, how do we contact them? Pick a frequency and start calling for help, they'll hear you. And it just goes on to the fact that, they're so thankful of, these guys, and they say, look, if you ever need help, you just call. And they carry on. And then they actually do have an accident. So they start calling for help. They don't think help's coming. And then they find the pyramid. And it turns out the pyramid is actually a base of operations for some long, weird, advanced technology civilization. It is like a weird Indiana Jones vibe that I really liked. And the fact that they managed to escape and then the whole pyramid just goes up. And I'm like, wow.
I quite like these zombites, and it's such a shame that they never came back. I know they got blown up, but they could have escaped, because there's the comic book adaptation where some of them actually do escape. And also when you look at episodes like the Cham Cham, they have a similar sort of terrorist organization with their own markings. They could have been the zombites, perhaps. They would have been a great candidate to bring back for some future episodes, rather than just having the Hood all the time, or maybe even team up with the Hood, maybe, I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. As fact as, it's just, they're all speaking a different language as well, just sort of like, I really wish I could understand what they are, but the fact that I can't is keeping me more intrigued. Just hearing that bloke giving the orders to going, Ampa. It's like, what is he ordering? And you just see the missiles move, and it's like, he's giving the order to a lift or something. So I would agree. So again, from Thunderbirds, it's Terror in New York City. The storyline of this one, just opening with the fact it's like, we're going to move the Empire State Building because it's a national monument and it needs protecting, but it needs moving so we can redevelop these fallen areas. I thought, that is, who comes up with the idea of moving a building? That blows me away from the start. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I definitely want to watch. And then just seeing it all falling apart from there. But also the fact they're coming back from another rescue and they fly too close to a new World Navy vessel, the Sentinel. And it's a case of the Sentinel goes, who are these people? And they get told, there's nobody in the area that should be there. And they go, right, interceptors. And I'm thinking, oh, this is not going to go well.
What was that?
You just see the damage that Thunderbird 2 has taken. And I'm like, any child who watches that, their heart sinks. I remember my girls watched it and they were like, what's going to happen? How are they going to do the rescues? My favourite line, which definitely I've been using it once or twice, is when Virgil says, oh, what can I do? Because he wants to feel useful, because Thunderbird 2 is still in the repair yard, and they just go
back to bed.
And as I've grown older, I know people like that. I know people who, could have a broken arm and they'll be like, oh, can I come in and do something at work today? No, you're useless. Stay home.
Funny thing is, this episode was chosen by my last guest, so I'll try not to repeat myself too much. But I've always felt Terror in New York City was overrated. One of the reasons is that this episode was originally 25 minutes. Then they expanded it to 50 minutes. So there's plenty of material that you need to pad it out. I never understood why they didn't give us a scene with Gordon confirming that Thunderbird 4 is okay after being crushed by the rocks. They just abruptly cut to the Ned Cook show. It's so jarring.
What happened to Thunderbird 4?
It's a very popular episode, and there are too many flaws for me personally where I can't really accept Terror in New York City as one of the best episodes. But I don't know, it's just my opinion. It's a very unpopular opinion. I've been told in the past.
No, I will agree. You make some good points, and that's the thing about the Gerry Anderson universe. There are loads of episodes I like, and then there are some where, well, as my list will show, where I'm just like, no, this no. So I do agree with you there. So number 3 for me is from the Captain Scarlet original series, and it's the episode Avalanche. I like this episode simply because, one, I like seeing Lieutenant Green when he's actually doing some field work and Captain Blue is taking over his position. I also like the fact that the one thing that nobody ever thinks would be lethal is oxygen. They've done all the checks after the first base has gone down. They're trying to figure out what's happened, and he just goes, can we take off our respirators? And as soon as he takes it off, cough, 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 can't breathe. He's like, hang on, did you check for oxygen? He's like, that explains it. They're removing the oxygen. And just as they make that revelation, the commander of the force just goes,
now, I've just ordered my missiles onto the launching platforms. One more strike against the frost line, and they launch. Destination, Mars. Out.
Nope, that's a terrible idea. That is not going to work. I like the fact that when the bases are reporting, the fact that you can hear this guy struggling to breathe.
And that scene happens just before Scarlet and Green discovered the oxygen. So there's a little hint. I like that little plant to then pay off later on.
I sit on the train backwards because I just like it, because I like looking out the window and feeling like, yeah, I'm in an SPV.
I know that Gerry has said in the past that he regretted that decision. I don't think it's the worst thing he ever came up with, because as a kid, yeah, I noticed the window in the SPV, they seem to be going backwards, but it never bothered me. It was like, oh, it's the future technology. I just accepted it, especially when, he created oxygen pills for 5XL5. I think that's the worst thing, in my opinion, as far as credibility is concerned. But no, a reverse-facing seat on an SPV, no, I love it. I thought it was a great idea.
You all right, Captain?
Yes, the rear-facing seat saved me.
So for number 4, my next choice is from UFO, and it is the episode Flight Path. The aliens are actually using one of Shadow's own personnel to feed them information from Sid so that they can plan an attack on the moon. This is really quite weird. He has sort of turned traitor. The fact he's been blackmailed. They try and figure out, and even Sid's like, not sure what's going on here. All the computers aren't helping. And then it's just the fact that Straker has that little model. And it just spins it around and around. And he goes, wait a minute. And he works it out and he gets it correct. And it's like, sunrise on the moon with heavy sunspot. The moon would be blind. And it's a case of, oh, crike, that's not bad. And this was, obviously, it's the point before that they had the defense rovers that they brought in later on in the season. So we need a guy with a rocket launcher out there. Well, the guy who's sort of been blackmailed has already volunteered. I thought that was a definite turnaround, because he shows like he knows what's happened. He knows he's done wrong, but he then sort of redeems himself. You might break members of Shadow, but Shadow itself will still be strong. And overall, I like the theories and everything that they put behind it, because it's all like all the math and the science is like, oh yeah, we pick it up on radar. Not if there's sunspot activity, which we know is going to happen soon. Oh, and then just as they're waiting, out of nowhere, that little UFO appears.
One of the great things about UFO is this unsettling, haunting vibe that it has. The UFO is coming, you just don't know when, and of course it comes out through the sunlight. Roper is on his own as well. It doesn't even have any backup.
It's got to be difficult firing a rocket, because you see videos of military people with javelins or stingers, and it's like, that's got to be difficult. He's doing this in low gravity in this bulky spacesuit. And I actually quite like the design of the rocket, because it looks like it's been designed almost around the spacesuit a little bit. So it looks like it's more for them to use. And then he gets that little puncture, and I'm like, ooh. Overall, I'd say one of the ones I'd definitely keep. So my final choice is from Space 1999, the very first episode, Breakaway. There's so much about Space 1999 that I love. The Eagle transports are by far one of my favourite Gerry Anderson vehicles. They're almost almost inspired by Thunderbird 2. Their pods are modular. 1 minute they're a transport, the next they're a cargo hauler, the next they're an Eagle rescue unit. It's the fact that it's like, they can do everything. If you need something, you need an Eagle. We're dumping all our nuclear waste on the moon. Yeah, I could definitely see the human race doing that. And the fact that it creates this big explosion that pushes the moon just enough to break Earth orbit. If you put enough thrust behind anything, it will break an orbit. It will be able to leave. And then it's the case of, right, now we're in a survival situation. and they've got to think. And you've got Commander Koenig is cool under pressure. He's trying to figure out what can be done. He's trying to keep Moonbase Alpha active. He's trying to figure out what to do. And the guy above him is just getting in the way, being a pain. It's just a case of you are in command, yes, but this is my moon base.
You'd think the first thing to do is to try and get back to Earth, but because, like UFO, Space 1999 is just as pessimistic, I love how Koenig just sees everything for what it is. It's going to be foolish. Let's just not try. Let's just adapt to our situation and try to find a new world. I think that's a much more it's a horrible thought, but it's more believable in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a case of you have to weigh it up. You could utilize every Eagle and fill them, and they would have enough fuel to make one trip, probably just make a safe landing on Earth. But one tiny miscalculation, and it all goes to pot. So it's better to say, right, we know we're safe here. We've got what we need to survive. We're not risking it because we know this is going to happen.
Yeah, that's right. My interview with AJ is also going to be a two-parter, and so next week we'll cover his destroy list. Once again, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give it a like, a share, and a subscribe. And if you would like the show to continue, please donate to me on Buy Me a Coffee or GoFundMe. The links are in the description. This is Adam Luff, signing out.